Well, we had a nice break from our events here at the Flagler, but we're back ready to rock and roll. We're starting off in September with Mike Rafferty, who will dazzle you with his tales of alligators. Going forward, we'll have a panel discussion next month on October 14th. This is September already. Count my fingers. Okay, October 14th. We have a panel discussion on Hope Sound. So look forward to seeing everyone back here then, along with perhaps some of our winter visitors, to join us and make this a little larger event each time. Mike, I'll leave it up to you.
Do my best. I'll stand for as long as I can. I do have my own old age problems too, you know. Like y'all can call me Mike. Last name's Rafferty. Lived in Martin County just most all of my life, okay? And not used to speaking in a microphone, to be honest with you. But anyway, I used to do these talks, they call them, with a lot of classes for in schools. They bring the children out to my facility, we called it. It was a health-approved meat processing plant, and that's where I processed my alligators. We didn't use the word, to be politically correct, butcher, but that's basically, you know, and that's one of the things that you'll see, and I don't want to mention any TV companies in this multi-Treasure Coast area. They'll expand upon the fact that this person got caught by an alligator and then it got relocated. Okay, and I approached this company about this one time, and he said, well, they did, Mr. Rafferty. He said, they got relocated to this guy's processing facility. Yeah, but you know, people used to call in and they wouldn't think when I was doing it that alligator gets killed, right? And the alligator was what we got to fulfill our 8-page contract, which we had with the Game Commission. I was not on the payroll, okay? We caught was what we got. So they were quite valuable at the time. The farmers hadn't started getting into mass production so much, and then they eventually ruined the market, in my opinion. But so the alligators started being under a program. It was called the Nuisance Alligator Program the state developed to handle incidences where people felt and they were afraid of alligators being close to their homes and this and that, right? Well, it kind of got, what I thought, a little expanded too much, all right? And you'll hear me say things that are not necessarily derogative, but it's just my opinion that it's not the way I wished it would be, okay? And, you know, even they got involved with the farmers. The ranchers would say, oh, I got cattle out here, and, you know, they're going to catch my cattle and all this kind of stuff. Well, it wasn't up to me. I didn't write I call it a warrant, you know, for a better word, but it was a permit. And they regulated it quite stringently, even more so in the very beginning because restaurants used to have a license to sell the meat. And all the boxes had to be sealed with a number that matched the tag that went on the tail. And all these were called CITES tags. They locked on and they didn't come off when you sold the skins. And you should not get caught with an alligator without a tag on. I'm going to tell you that right now. And it's now a felony, so I've been told to have in your possession or killing. It could be a serious crime. I'll get into the question and answers as we go along. And unless you think there's something particular in that area that you want to discuss, and we'll keep it going. Hopefully I don't make you tired of listening to me. But so the alligator that's called the American alligator is one of 21 species of the crocodilian family. And there was only one place at what I've ever seen in the whole world that's got all 21 species, and that's at the St. Alligator Farm, St. Augustine Alligator Farm up in St. Augustine, okay? Not only did they have at one time all of the species, but they had one really, really nice, and they probably still do, about reptiles, these snakes. They got a room that's all conditioned in there, you know, air conditioned and controlled climate and everything. All these different types of snakes. Now, some people hate snakes like they hate a lot of other things, but they're safe if you go in there and want to see stuff that you probably never have seen before. And I've thought about going back myself. But one thing that really caught me of interest there, which is a little bit off the alligator side, is they had a 19.5-foot saltwater crocodile alive, okay? And his name was Gomek, all right? And he was in a big pen. And he didn't move very much. People really didn't want to go knocking on the thing or, whatever. Maybe they did, but I didn't see it. But I was really impressed. And at that time, and when I thought I'd caught two of the biggest alligators that you could see around here, which is pretty much true anymore, was 13 feet, okay? And so Gomek's mounted now. They full mounted him. He's mounted for everybody to walk upside. Hopefully they don't climb on him and ride on him, but I'm sure they probably do. Anyway, last year I seen a picture, and you can go into Facebook right now and look it up. It's 1956, I believe it was, in Australia. They actually caught a 28-foot crocodile. Now there's a lady standing next to it to give you some perspective about how big these reptiles can get. Okay, and I've heard stories about how big the American alligator can get, right? But according to a lot of people, are all 10-foot alligators, no matter if they're 4 foot or 5 feet long. Once you get there, well, I didn't get to look at him that close up. I thought he was really bigger than that, Okay, but the American alligator, in all seriousness, is a very high asset to the state of Florida. Okay. Even though, yes, people get caught and they do some stupid things sometimes. They know there's alligators in Florida when they move here, all right? And it seems to be on an annual basis, like it just did recently a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was either Martin or St. Lucie County. A doctor actually got in the water and got caught on the arm. I think, well, hey, you're gonna go in the kitchen, you might get ate, right? So anyway, the bad part about it is, Mr. Alligator is doing his thing just like the rest of everything's trying to do, survive, right? Lo and behold, he gets destroyed if he does what he's supposed to do. So, I kind of have a hard time dealing with that anymore. Think like, how many alligators like that I destroy? And you try to justify things all along the way too. Everybody does it. But to me, my justification was, well, and it's true, if I don't get him, somebody else is going to kill him and he's going to lay out there and rot. So basically, I ought to make something out of it and have some full uses of it, and which I did. I went all out on making every bit of it useful as I could. And the alligator in Florida serves a lot of purposes. People have no clue about what his natural purposes are, and I may leave out a few of them, but we have what's called the dry down time in Florida. When you don't get any rain, you know how the grass gets all brown and all that stuff? The water table goes down. Well, Mr. Alligator, he'll get out there and he'll waller a hole out there, and the water will drain down to his hole. Well, a lot of fish survive, and the birds eat a lot of the minnows, okay? And he'll burrow a cave and get back in this cave, and he'll live in there that hot time, and he's got a great food table for himself at that period. But he's also helping the birds and the fish and all the rest of the stuff to survive as well. Then, there's also his monetary value, which I think that's being stepped on pretty hard right now. That's just my opinion, and it's been that way for quite some time. But anyway, the skins, you can see the beautiful skins. I can show you these right here. These are full alligator boots that I had custom made, okay? And the lady made these for me all the way up. I just had them redone, the soles on them, and some repair work done on them just to make them look nice for you all tonight. And so they are quite a valuable leather good product is what I'm pointing out at. And the skins, this came off of an 8-foot alligator. It takes 4 square feet to make a pair of full boots, okay? Bottom is a foot, the top half is a foot also. And you'll notice the different patterns on the inside of the boots. I did that intentionally because you want something that's a soft leather when you're wearing it, but strong. And then on the outside is the larger pattern. So this, on this side, is along the belly, okay? Along the side, right along in here, okay? And then the under part of that is the belly. Sorry, if I've confused you on that. I sometimes confuse myself.
I have a question about the boots.
Yes, ma'am.
Why aren't
They don't fit me any longer. Once I got old, I shrunk about 1.5 inches, right? And some of that went to my feet. I guess they spread it out too high. I tried to put them on tonight. It's a good question. I said, man, I can get in them, but they're so tight, you know. Well, down here in Florida, to be honest with you too, I never wore them that much, only because they're so heavy, okay? And the heat down here is so hot, okay? And, you know, most people don't know and see it when they see a nice pair of boots, what they're made out of, or check it out. It's not really anymore. How, pardon me?
Does it breathe?
Does it breathe? No, they really don't breathe. No, they're not forgiving that way. I'm sorry, but Liz, you know that I had on my shop. I had an office where I had the processing going on, and I used to take the skins to a company over in Sebring, Custom Tanning. They were called in Sebring, and the guy gave me a whole bunch of little pieces of different types of skins from all different types of animals, from fish to lizards, to manatee, all these kinds of things. I put all this stuff on my wall, and the kids would love to come in here and look at all of this stuff, right? And one of the toughest leathers, which beat the alligator, okay, was not a manatee as talking about the big manatees that swim like that. I'm talking about that, you know, it's got the, maybe it's the wrong word, but the long, stingray, I'm sorry, it's a stingray, okay? That is the toughest, hardest skin that you can get is off that stingray, you know? Anyway, this part of the skin of the alligator is on his back, okay? There's a scientific word that the biologists give to it, but us old crackers, we used to call them scoots, okay? That's these little bony square sections in here. And if you had one that you could see without the skin on it, Boo loaned me this one. I guess, I don't know where he got it from, maybe me. But these are really porous, okay? And what that does is this is actually the alligator's heating pad. You would think it's armor for fighting, but that's not. It helps probably a lot in that aspect, but it helps him digest his food, because he'll swim up high on the water when it's like in the springtime or in the wintertime, just to help that temperature go higher in his body, because he's a reptile, you know, and he wants to digest the food. So it serves a good purpose. And I used to get the bigger ones out like this, and I used to debone them so they look, you know, really nice and clean, and a lot of people have no idea what they were, and I'd sell stuff like that too. Some of the other things that, like I sold this to Boo. He's a good hoarder, by the way. Everybody that knows him, you know. So he's he's kept it all these 50-some years probably. It's a beer mug. It's what it's intended for, you know. But a lot of folks have made them into like for flowers and stuff like that. And now this one here, you see it now. It's not. This is about the same size as my foot, right? Now that's about a 10-foot gator right there, okay? You go over here to the museum, which I encourage everybody to do, not just to look at the alligator products, but as you walk in the main door, there's a real alligator there now. I mean, it's a 13-foot alligator. I donated to the museum, and it's well preserved, okay? And behind it are also 2 feet. They might have even brought them over here, but, and they are here, they are on this side over here, but they have a good, what I'm getting around to is, everything on that alligator has contributes to the value of this alligator in one way or another to Florida. You know, how many people want to see an alligator? You know, oh, come here, look at this alligator, look at the alligator, you know. Then they turn around when neighbors walking their little dog, oh, that thing's got to go. It's sad. You know, 4 foot and above, and they don't know where they got to go. You know, that's what they were, minimum of 4 feet. Could not relocate them at the time that I was in there. That was their then policy, and it's changed. I talked to a trapper now over on the lake one day. I helped him catch about an 11-foot gator at the marina in Pahokee, and he said, Mike, things are different now. He said, we can take these gators, and there's a guy out there, and he's got a piece of property. He's got a lake on it. And he's licensed to do it and all this stuff. And you know, they're paying us now we sell it to this guy, and he'll have people come down here and hunt them for $1,000 or whatever. I said, what? He goes, yeah. He said, and they give us a book now with so many permits for a place like this where these gators are frequently to show up, and we come by when the owner here tells us to come by and get them, and boom, 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 boom. I said, wow. Well, we'll get into this more of a money thing in a little bit, okay? That's another thing I got a little bit different of an opinion on. But anyhow, then the first thing that people do is they come up to me and I catch the gator, because I'd have him secured and taped up, and then they want to come down and, I'd give them a lecture when I'm catching the alligator too. And I'm telling you what, you get in one of these adult communities, you get a crowd before you know it. Now, can anybody guess what the first question is that they're going to ask me?
What's it feel like?
He had his hand up first, but ladies for first, right?
Yep.
What would you say, ma'am?
What's it feel like?
Nope.
How do you catch the gator?
Nope.
Will he bite?
What do you do with him? Well, my answer was, now I got a sense of humor now, okay? Now, I try to have a sense of humor, right? I said, well, ma'am, I said, we get caught with the alligators, and we'll take them home and skin them, and we sell the meat to these restaurants, and you know what? Them Yankees will come down here, and they'll eat anything. So anyway, they got a kick out of that. But if you want to talk about the meat, okay, we had a Dr. Leaks at the University of Florida, did a study in combination with not only the Nuisance Alligator Trappers Association, which I belong to, there was 52 of us, and the alligator farmers. They wanted to promote the alligator meat, okay, and products just like anything else you get promoted. Without the skin on a chicken, okay, meat for meat, the alligator had about 1/4 the cholesterols than what the chicken did. So it was a healthier meat. And then another person would ask me, what's it taste like? Come on, okay? Well, guess what? It's everybody, yeah, okay, it tastes like chicken. That's most of the time people would ask, it tastes like chicken, right? Well, what did the chicken taste like before he had his feathers taken off, right? No, the thing was, and I told him, I said, look, I've got a book with 102 recipes in it for alligator. The Trappers Association got all these recipes by all of us trappers. We made a book. I don't think you're going to find the book anymore, but I've got a copy of it. And all of these recipes led to a couple things. First thing was, you have to, whatever you season it with to give the flavoring, whatever you tenderize it with, well, it contributed, and then also, the size of the animal also. If you ate a little 4-foot tender alligator, it was delicious. Now, you didn't have to do much tenderizing. Yeah, just fine. But you get a 10-foot, 12-foot old bull alligator, right, like that, and he's kind of tough. You got to do some tenderizing, and got to marinate it and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, one thing led into the other, and I started the first gourmet alligator product business in this country, okay? And it was, you are not going to guess the name of this business, but I had my own logo and all that stuff. And it might even be, and it probably is in that book in there. You can see myself and the guy that was preparing all these products for me. His name was Ralph Garber. He's over at Mrs. Peters' Smokehouse over here. The name of the product was Alligator Bites, okay? Anyway, the Game Commission did not like that picture that I had put in the Star magazine, They said, why would you do something like that? Because they like good public rapport. They didn't like showing a dead animal. I said, well, hell, I said, you let people drive around with a deer laying on top of their truck. Why not an alligator? He goes, I see your point, Mike, but, I said, okay, well, it's too late now. He goes, yeah. I said, so anyway, we made a whole lot of products. He made for me a smoked pate, the dip that you can get, like fish dip. That thing went off like rockets. I mean, it got international attention once that magazine picked up on it, and I'm not serious. I went into Japan. I got offers from Japan to put it in their magazines for free, and then, which is smart the way they did it, because if you prescribed to the magazine as a prescriber on a regular basis, you had first offer for 30 days to contact me to make me a business proposal. At the end of 30 days, it was all fair game, right? Well, at that time, you couldn't get enough product, enough meat to keep up with the demand. I had a distributor, the company here in Stuart, Salerno, take it all over the place. A lot of it went down to Palm Beach Polo Club. I was selling it in 4-pound tubs. It went like this. I had called gator balls, you know. Rolled them up in the balls. You know, I don't know what you're thinking of, man, but anyway. And you know, you deep fry them, and I made that out of 60% alligator and 40% pork, along with progressive Italian style breadcrumb, 1 egg. I'm sure you're going to go out and try some of this.
You froze them?
Yeah, I would take the dark meat off the alligator, which is a lot less value than the white meat, okay? It was about $2 a pound at that time, and now the white meat was $4 a pound. So I raised up my value using the dark meat, okay, and I substituted to give it flavor, the good flavor with the pork, because it really didn't have that. Remember, I said there wasn't much flavor in it. Well, this gave it the flavor, and I came up with that combination. We rolled them into little balls about this big. I put them on these trays, and I slid them into a freezer, froze them, put them in 5-gallon Ziploc bags, and put them into 5-pound boxes, okay? And then when I'd go to these powwows, I used to do powwows for the Miccosukee and the Seminole tribe before they got all their monies up in Melbourne, and I had them lined up I'm in deep. I had gators and taters, boy, and a soda for $5. They wouldn't get but one of those little paper cup things. They just wanted to try it, okay? And I'm telling you what, I'm stuffing that cash in now. I got my money back. So I made some money that way, right? So that worked out well. But another thing that contributed to Mr. Alligator, you know, and
What part's dark meat and what part's white meat?
that's a good question. See, a lot of people just think you eat gator tail, right? No. The gator tail is about 40% of the white meat, all right? And the way they got that word was that the poachers used to go up there and just chop that tail off and boogie, get out of there, right? Real quick and easy to skin the tail out, no big deal working it, and they're gone. Well, the other white meat, and I'll leave that dark meat to the last, the other white meat is the jowls, these big old cheeks right here, all of the neck, okay, all the way around. And then also, like on down the back straps you get, like you do on any animal, the back straps inside on the chest, under the ribs, okay? Now, that finishes up, I think, pretty much everything but the dark meat. The dark meat came off the legs, okay? And then there was another section of dark meat, I think it was on the lower part of the ribs, okay? But then also, Disney World started catching on to this fever about alligator being ate in Florida. Now, Louisiana was bad about it too. I mean, they were good about it. But they wanted ribs, okay? If you can barbecue a rib is a rib, right? A bird is a bird. Well, the ribs were good too. I didn't sell Disney World the ribs, okay? Because I think the farmers were into that pretty good. But I was actually, see, the alligator meat was pretty much what would you call that? Not a teaser, but a novelty. Thank you. Yeah, well, you can get some ranchers right. Go, sir.
How do you actually catch the gators? Like, if you're doing it by yourself, or do you have 2 people do it?
Pardon me?
How do you catch the gators, like, by yourself, or like, how do you do it, like, with 2 people?
No. I'll get into that in just a minute. I'm about done with the meat products, right? Well, that's the last on the meat. All right, so we'll solve the meat deal that way. And so the white meat was more preferable because it didn't have the sinews in it and all that stuff. You had to do more work with that, run it through a grinder and things, okay? But that's that. And then in other words, you never wasted anything from the claws you see like this to, this is made by Native Americans called Doe Wheaton. She made earrings for me and all that. And I would trade the feet, cut off the feet, and I gave her a whole 55-gallon barrel at one time. And she made me whatever jewelry I wanted. So jewelry became involved with it too. Back scratchers, we had paws made back scratchers with. Yeah, but now you go into these truck stops and stuff, and you see these little small alligator heads. Well, they're made with a freeze drying machine. I couldn't keep up with a freeze drying machine. All mine done was with what do you call that? Real carcinogenic formaldehyde. Okay, you got to be real careful with that. So I made all these alligator heads, you know, like one for Boo and this other guy here, and that was good. We'll get into some meat of trapping now. Okay. All right. Well, I did it for 17 years. I can still count them all on my fingers, right? So I did good there. But we didn't have any schools to go to at that time. They got us old folks that had been around here forever and wanted to catch alligators. And they'd ask you too and said, well, how do you know how to catch alligators? I don't know. You had to say, well, I was raised up in Indian Town. You know? Are you still doing it? No, I got a wife and family, and you know, hey, okay, I own an electrical company. People don't know that about me. I own an electrical corporation for 12 years. I did this on the side. There was not enough money into it to do it for a living, okay? Trust me. But it had a good nighttime. You got offers to go out where you got the permits to go out to on these ranches, okay? Excellent fishing, and your permit was good for like 90 days, and it was renewable. That was the best part, right? So you could go in these gated communities where the people got gators out there. Oh man, look at the fish out there. I'll have to fish a little bit to draw that alligator out of that culvert, right? It works. So you know, but you got it when you got a complaint, you got to respond to it. Boom. If you don't respond to it, the gator's probably gone down the canal and somewhere else, aggravating more people, right? But depends on the time of the year how much movement they do. Okay, and it's good. You get the people lined up and you say, hey, next time you see this gator, if you didn't see him then, next time you see this gator, or when was the last time you seen this gator, right? Oh, he was here this morning. He's here every day. Oh, he'll be in my house the next day. Okay, you got to learn how to treat and find the gators, because every trip you make costs gas. Remember, they're not paying anything for you, so you better get good at it. Well, they wanted you to use live capture. Okay, I'm like, this could be a challenge. You know, I've never wrestled an alligator in my life. We just pulled a trigger, you know, and then you skinned him. Back in the day, I mean, so I heard these guys did that, right? So anyway, the live capture part was nobody told you how to live capture an alligator. All right. Now, I was 16, a juvenile, so I could tell you the honest to God's truth. When I was a juvenile, I borrowed my mother's car, which was a 66 LTD, right? And we found a gator with a rope on. I said, hey, bud, come here, man. We're fishing. I said, what's this? He said, Mike, that's a gator on a hook. He said, I know whose it is, too. Now, that's how bad the poaching was, right? And so he showed me, and I learned how to skin from a younger guy. He was only 14. And his uncle did it with a cane pole on the side of his old 50 Ford, right? You know how you can find this stuff out. But anyway, you learn how to capture what a gator will do, how he'll move, okay? And all that stuff takes time. You don't pick it up overnight. And you got to learn a lot of stuff, your own things you got to figure out how to do, which I have to do me a little patting on the back for that one, because if you don't, you're not going to be doing it too long, right? And so you can't use you could use a firearm under certain circumstances, but you think about that, right? Most of these alligators that are complained about are in people's neighborhoods. They don't want a trapper running around with his rifle, you know, shooting in neighborhoods, right? Causing problems, you know, I mean, scaring people, all that kind of stuff. And seeing things killed and blood and all that. No, they don't want to see that. They want them to be picked up and taken on out the humane way, all taped up. And then you pull the trigger, you know? So, anyway, yeah. But I got into a little bit of a disagreement with him one time. It wasn't bad. I got supposedly a letter put in my file, which is the only time. Some guy calls me up and he says, can you come and get some of these, what do they call these geese? They were great big geese, you know. He said, they don't keep me up. They honking all by my window and all by my door. I said, well, let me find out. I said, let me look them up. They're non-native to Florida, right? Non-migratory geese, you know. And so African geese, they were called African geese, right? And I said, who owns them? He goes, nobody. He said, but I'll pay you $100 just to get him out of this pond. I said, I'll be there tonight. I got him, you know. But doggone it, some kids making out on the back porch, seen it done, and they just got all mad about it and everything like that. But I did get my $100 and got called on the carpet for it. And he said, well, you're all right. He said, it's not against the law to take a non-native, you know, whatever. He said, you're okay. He said, I'll just say I'll put a letter in your file. I said, all right. So got out of that one.
Shoot them all, or how'd you get rid of them?
How do you get rid of them? Are you kidding, ma'am? Haven't you ever eaten any geese before?
What's that?
A goose.
Yeah.
They're delicious.
Yeah.
They really are. So, you know, I mean, for me, I have no problem with any of that stuff. If it's good to eat, I eat it. You know, I mean, hey, and if it ain't good to eat, I'll make it good to eat. So, but anyway, you could use hooks, or you could use. There's a bunch of them. Set lines. You'll see it on that TV show, which is all hyped up, which is, you know, where they got those guys down in the swamps, Louisiana, and they catching these alligators behind these big shark hooks and all that kind of stuff. I never did like doing that, okay? I could do it in a unique situation, but when I rode up there, I wanted to get my gator and go on down the road. I don't care if it took me an extra hour or so to do it, you know? And so a lot of guys, and I don't mind, this is a good way with a rod and reel. They got like an 8-foot rod, and what's called an ugly stick. It bends really good, and I had a good pen reel, 750. You can cast on out of there across the pond and get it on the other side and sink it into him. Now that's a real good fight right there. Okay, depending on how big the gator. But either way, it's still a good fight. You know, you can get him on the bank and get a noose around his neck, pull him up there, and then get on him and tape him up and tie him up. You know, and
All by yourself?
yeah. I only nearly got bit one time. Okay. And you make a mistake, you know. I'd get my Jeep pulled up next to the pond where it was at, and I'd get the gator what do you call that? Used to me, okay? Like I was out there and I'd be fishing just like anybody would be fishing, and I could even catch fish at the same time. Remember, I told you it works. But then I had my pole laying next to me that I could catch Mr. Gator with too. So anyway, you get to pulling that fish up out of the water. He's going to be interested. That guy's fishing. I might get me a fish, right? Throw it on the other side and snag him, right? And it worked. But it didn't work in some of these ponds that have the hydrilla, the hyacinth trees. You know, that's not a good place. So I came up with and another buddy of mine that was a trapper. I got him the job. Came up with this great idea of creating bombs, okay? Non-explosive bombs, right? A bleach jug, okay? A bleach jug, because they're harder than a milk jug. Take about 50 feet of line. I won't tell you what kind of line, because I don't want anybody imitating it, right? And you had to know the right size hook, and you don't have the right size bait, because the bait I used would float on top of the water, okay? It smelled nasty. But for an alligator, that was a Big Mac attack, okay? I'd wrap that line around the bleach jug, and then where I'd seen him go down, I'd sling that bait out there and let it whap hit the line, and then we'd leave. Come back in about 30 minutes, that gator had done come up most of the time. A Big Mac, right? Swim over and swallow it down. Then all I have to do is take my reel that catch gator with and cast it over the line where that went off the jug, right? And then catch the line and reel it up to the jug. And here we go. Get the jug and get the rope in my hand, slide the noose over the rope, get it around his neck, and tighten that. And then I used to be able to buy these self-locking snares. I couldn't ever find them last time I went gator hunting, right? With my cousin. This is back in about 4 years ago on the lake. He got drawn. I couldn't find those self-locking snares. Once he gets on them, they won't come off. But these new ones they got, they'll slide back and forth. I didn't like that. But those self-locking snares, you can get it around their neck, pull them out, and the thing is you have a pipe. For people that don't know, the pipe goes down the rope and on the cable, holds the noose open, okay, so you can slide it on there. When you pop the rope at the end of the pipe, it draws the cable tighter and around his neck. Well, the first thing Mr. Alligator's wanting to do, he's wanting to bite what the heck's got him around the neck, right? So he'll chomp that pipe, and then he'll go to rolling, doing that 360-degree spin he does. They call it the death roll, okay? And they'll tire out real quick, okay? So that's one of the things I learned quick about an alligator. He's strong, real strong, stronger than me, the bigger they are, but they tire out quick. So I let them fight themselves. Once they tire out, okay, and I can get them up next to a tree, I'd come around and I'd push their jaw shut, step around, get over his back, grab his jaws and shut him up like this. I used electrical tape and taped his mouth up. And then I'd do like they do these ICE agents do them. What do they call them? Foreigners. Okay. The ICE agents, they do this to the foreigners. That's what I would do. But I had a truck all set up, depending on there's pictures in this binder over. You'll see a lot of pictures of my old Gator Jeep. You know, it was a postal Jeep that I bought for $800 and drove it for 8 years. Okay, I custom built it with a rack to hold a boat on the top, and I had rollers, 2 rollers. I got like about 1.5 foot wide each, and I'd run it down to the back with the front, and I had a winch on the truck, so I could run the winch over it and down on the ground and drag the gator up on top of the truck. It was a really big gator alive, right? And I could put 2 10-foot alligators on top of that truck, that little Jeep, and I'd have their heads hanging out the front when I'm coming back from Okeechobee. On the necks right here, hanging on the front. We pulled into a breakfast place one time to get breakfast after we'd hunted all night, right? Of course, I'd put those rollers on top of them, and then the boat on top of that, and then I'd tie everything down, right? And I had a rail on the side so nothing could really come off. But we were sitting in there having breakfast one day, and these people come walking by in front of the Jeep, right? These 2 people. And you know what? They didn't even see those heads on those big gators. We about couldn't believe it. I said, how could you not see these 2 big alligator heads sticking out of the front of this truck, you know? But there's a lot of good stories about Okeechobee. I won't get into all that right now, but that was let me talk about this a little bit. I'll get back into the money part of it, okay? When they first opened up the hunt on Lake Okeechobee, actually they had a statewide, they opened it up on what they called harvestable areas, okay, where the biologists went in and they did a study on a nightlight survey to see how much of the population would be harvestable, okay? So they come up with this magic number. And the first year when they issued the licenses, I got one, okay? And which was nice. No, wait a minute, did I get one the first year? I don't think so. But I remember I had one of only 5 meat processing plants in South Florida, which means from Vero Beach all the way down through the Keys. There's only 5 places you could take that alligator to get it butchered. Do you think they were smart enough to ask me how many gators I could process in a day or 2 days, right? They didn't ask anybody how they were going to get their gators processed and where. People got really mad, okay? And I had to send a ton of people away because I had only 1 table at that time. Next year I had 2 tables, but it takes a lot of time to be able to process an alligator. And there's a lot of work with getting the skins all ready and salted and everything put away, the processing plant cleaned out. But regardless, the first year they had 15 tags. You could catch 15 alligators with your license, okay? It was $250 for that license, and $50 you could take an agent with you to help you. And I think you were allowed 2 agents, but I'm not for sure about that, right? But let's just say you're allowed 1 agent. That's $300, okay, for 1 license. Well, guess what? It didn't take them long to figure out, let's cut it down to 5 tags instead of 15. That's too many for these people, right? Now, mind you, a lot of these guys, they got onto this big time. They said, hell, we can advertise all through the country and have people come down here and hunt gators. We'll charge them $1,000 each. That's $15,000 for 15 tags, right? Well, there's liability involved and all of that kind of stuff, but, you know, some of them, I'm sure they did it, but, you know, where are you going to take the gators to? So what they did on the second year was when they changed, or not, they changed it after about maybe the third or fourth year, I'm not sure. They actually solicited to all the people that own seafood markets and places where they clean catfish and stuff like that on the lake, okay? They never came by and asked me again, well, hey, we're going to bump it up and set everybody else up to do it. No, they didn't do that. They just forget old Mike, you know? It doesn't matter. So anyway, I still added another table. I gave it up on the second year. I did the handshake business with people taking them on their word. I got 1/3 of their 15 gators. I got 5 of them. At that time, the gators were big, they were healthy, beautiful skins, and they were just sitting ducks, man. We could catch them just left and right, okay? And that lake was so pristine at that time. We went over and looked at the lake, and the gators would come right out after dark, and they'd get all floated up on the top, and they'd go swimming along real slow. And the minnows, you could see I'd be behind the gator, not with the light in his eyes, but just where he couldn't see me, but behind me, because he wouldn't look into the light, right? He wasn't used to being looked at close up with a light at that time. And that little gator would go, chomp, chomp, chomp. He was filling up his gullet with minnows. There was so many thousands of minnows all around him. That water was so clean and so pristine, unbelievable. 3 or 4 years ago when I went with my cousin over there, we didn't see the first, we got one alligator that was like over 10 feet and one 8 foot. We hardly seen any really, really big gators at all. And the ones we got were all drawn in. They weighed probably a third less than what the other ones did, okay? And the guy told me, and I told you about that trapper that I helped him catch that 11-foot gator in that marina. He said, Mike, it ain't like it used to be out here, man. He says, ever since they built this concrete riprap all the way around from the shoreline and all this, he said, well, that hurricane come out here a couple of years back, went across, it slammed so many gators up against that rock and killed so many of those gators. He said, nah. He said, you'll be lucky to find a big gator all the way from Port Miaca, clean on down to Canal Point. He says, nah. He said, you probably won't. He said, you might. But he said all the females had gone south down there around, I guess it was Belgrade. There's a name for that island. He said, you might find a couple down there because they followed the females down there. But as far as nesting habitat goes through here, he said, nah, they pretty much wiped most all of it out. So when you don't have any grass to the minnows to graze up in and feed, you know, and the birds to have places to eat and all that kind of stuff, it's sinful, I think, to ruin that lake like they did. But that's just old Mike's opinion, you know. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, that was one of the nicest places to hunt alligators at, right there. I'd like to speak a little bit about what's happening with all of Florida, okay? And that, because it affects the alligator as well. And the alligator belongs here. It was here originally, and it still should always stay here. But I think what you're going to see is, like, I was going to ask the question here, okay? And I talked to Gary over here. I said, let me ask this one question, okay? How many of you people have seen a wild alligator in the last year? I'm talking about not on the news, not in the paper, actually went out behind the canal and seen, here's an alligator. That's impressive. I wouldn't have thought 4 or 5 of you would have said it, okay? Because of the loss of habitat. I mean, with the development being as intense as it is, and it wasn't this intense when I was in it, because especially in Martin County, we have such large land tracts. It's not like Port St. Lucie with all the plotted lots. When these developers come in, I mean, it's like taking everything down to the bone pretty much, you know. And he's one of the things that pretty much getting away, trying to get into another place. And they get crowded into things like the C-23 and places like that. But the loss of the habitat and the nesting places is eventually, the way they're working it now, going to create a serious problem for a ton of species, not just him. I know along the whole east coast of Florida, and I've lived over in Palm City since, I can't tell you, 70, 80, about 80 or 81, somewhere's in there. I'm seeing loss of about 13 bird species pretty much gone, okay? And you ask himself now, how many of y'all ever seen a bobwhite quail in your yard? No, okay. Well, how many have ever seen a thrasher in your yard? No. How many of y'all ever seen a red-winged blackbird in your yard? Not around here. You see what I'm saying? Okay, well, you could go on and on. Like the bluebird is pretty much gone. You can see some blue jays and some cardinals and sparrows and things like that. But the little mourning dove, you got the big dove, but you don't have the little mourning dove anymore. He's gone. And the meadowlarks. I mean, you don't see meadowlarks out here anymore, do you? You know what a meadowlark is? Yeah. Okay. Oh, it goes on and on, right? So I'm thinking like, wow. And now the gophers are being a big thing. All the bulldozing down of all these lots, and they got a special program where you have what's called a bank. Okay, where only one landowner in this area has got a bank to be able to put the turtles on his place, all right, that the Game Commission has approved. Got a big ranch. Because they're only allowed to put so many that'll make it work. He gets, I think it was $1,000 or $2,000 for, I think it's two, to be able to bring that turtle and put it on his property. And the guy that catches them, he gets good money. So you're talking maybe $1,200 for this guy to come out and catch it, another $2,000 to put it on there. That's about $3,200. So what happens to Mr. Turtle? He's going to get run over or plowed over, right? That's a saying. That's a sin. I seen one day, not too long ago, a turtle, a gopher turtle, with a totally pink shell on him. Somebody had painted him pink. I said, what in the is this all about? And I said, there it is. They want him to be seen when he's crossing the road, so he don't get smashed. So anyway, that gets a little carried away. I'm sorry, but we'll do any questions and answers right now before y'all get too tired of hearing me. Any?
Were you involved in finding the gator back in '93 that attacked that kid on the Loxahatchee River?
I was involved in two fatalities, okay? Robert Crespio, which was up on Fort St. Lucie Boulevard in that boat ramp close to that, right in Fort St. Lucie there by the marina, by the bridge, that big bridge that goes over. He was just to the north of that bridge a little bit. And then I got involved one down, and it might be the one I think you're talking about, Big George, they called him. Yeah. That was down in the, what they call that, Jonathan Dickinson State Park, back of Camper Nelson's lodge back in there. Yeah, I was in that. A deputy in Fort St. Lucie shot that gator, but that was an interesting story. I mean, I'm so sad as it was, it had already happened, right? The boy just got hit by this 12-foot gator. He got him, carried him across the river, and I know what gators do. And he'd laid down one underneath, and the boy was drowned. And anyway, the deputy's right there running back and forth and back and forth, and the gator's going to stay down when they got boat traffic. So I called the GFC up at that time, and I said, you need to get somebody out here that's got a right the size, powerful gun, okay? Because one deputy come out there and shot at him with a pistol. I said, no. So anyway, the wildlife officer came out there and he shot him with a rifle and killed him. And that was bad. But the other one was in the Jonathan Dixon, and my brother happened to be down there visiting with me, and I got the call to go down there and got the boat. And they'd already taken a young man out. I think he was part of a Boy Scout team or something like that, baseball team, one of the two. And they had seen a gator back in there before. There was a washout or with a sand. There was a sandbar, okay? And a cop had his German Shepherd, I think it was, with him. They're doing the paddling thing from the Indian Town Road or whatever they did coming back through there. It was a quite popular thing to do. But they had stopped to get on, that cop and the dog had got there, and the gator had gone over the guy's legs that were still in the water to get that German Shepherd, right? And you could tell Big George because he had a knot on the side of his head. Captain Scott was the guy that ran the park at that time, and he described the gator to me, so I knew what it was. and where it would be and all that stuff. But they let it stay because it went for the dog. It didn't bother people. That was why. If it had bothered the cop or something like that and they thought it was aggressive towards people, he'd have been gone. But it went after the dog. The guy got the dog, okay? He saved the dog. And anyway, the water was only about yay deep. It wasn't deep. You could see all the way to the bottom, okay? And this wildlife officer, he wanted me to go back there in my boat. I had one of those canoes at the time. That's my favorite boat. I left the motor on it just to act as a rudder, like steer you forward, because you couldn't gas power through. There was too many limbs and trees and stuff. We had this news guy that wanted to go with us, right? A cameraman. I didn't care if he went or not, as long as he didn't interfere with me getting this gator. And the officer, he's whatever. I said, okay, but you know, I'm not reliable for you either. He said, all right. He took all of his equipment out there, and anyway, we got back in there where it supposedly happened at, and we didn't see the gator, but we knew it was right there, okay? And like I said, the young man they already taped the little boy out. And so I said, you go down there, and he had a rifle. I said, I'll stay down here. If he comes up, I'll look for him, because we're a little distance, not too bad. Sure enough, the gator came up right in front of him, okay? And before the first thing he did, old Gary, boom, shot at the gator, you know, with his rifle. It's funny because he missed him. I mean, how do you miss a head that big? He's in front of you, you know. He must have been shaking awful bad, right? Or drew it too quick and pulled too quick, but he missed him. I said, oh, okay. So the gator, all he did was go back down. And I said, all right, so I knew where he was. I knew the gator was just going to lay on the bottom. And I had brought with me what's called a 44 caliber bang stick. I don't know if y'all know what that is, right? It's bad, dude. One pop of that, you're gone. And I had emptied the whole boat out, and I had just enough of a paddle or a pole. I had a pole with me, right? I could pull that boat along because the water was flowing. And sure enough, there he is. I stuck my pole in the ground, I held the boat, and I reached over and I went, boom. Didn't even hear it because it's about 3 or 4 feet down, right? Then, boom, bubbles come up. He's done. Boy, I throw that rope. Gary, hold my boat, man. I down in the water. Got a rope around his neck, and next thing we know, had that gator loaded over the back of the boat, the hull of the boat. It's getting on towards dark. And so I'm sitting on the front. I had a trolling motor. That's how we got back in there, with a trolling motor and a battery. And Gary's sitting behind me on the seat up there, and the newsman was behind us there. Well, guess what? The news guy, he didn't get a clip out of that deal. Everything he got was wet, okay? But here goes my bad sense of humor again, right? This guy, one of the room we had for him was he could hang his feet over the hull of the boat like this here and hold on to this side. He had to be drugged with the boat along the side, okay, the outside of the boat, right? So I looked around at Gary and I winked at him. He goes, yeah. I said, hey, Gary, look up yonder. There's a really big gator up there, man. Look at him. He goes, that guy was like, trying to get in the boat. Nah, we're just messing with you. Anyway, we got that gator, and I forget how big he was. He was big, but he was really skinny too, okay? They get really hungry after mating season, you know? And people ask me, well, how big of a gator will hurt a person? That's I said, well, look, it's like this. You take a 10-foot alligator that might weigh 400 pounds, okay? And you take it with a young child that's only going to weigh 75 pounds, he can grab that child and pull him down without a problem, right? But you take a 4-foot alligator that might weigh 40 pounds, and you take a 200-pound man, he can't pull that man down. So it's got to get that balance point when the alligator's big enough to pull the person down. I use a magic number because I know how much gators change in weight sizes. An 8-foot alligator, okay? But that won't help y'all figure it out because all alligators are 10 feet, remember? They say from the tip of the nose to the eyes, it's a foot for every inch, okay? How many of you guys are going to go out there and measure him? Yes, sir, you had a question? The guy behind you.
Did you know Ken Holly?
Yeah. Out in Indiantown. Out in Indiantown.
Well, Palm City, actually. He was a big-time, infamous alligator poacher.
Never met him before in my life, sir. People ask me, when's the last time you caught an alligator, Mike? I said, can't remember when the last time I caught a legal alligator. No, bad humor. Okay. Anything else? Got anybody? We'll go to question and answer type of thing now. Or if you want to know something else, just let me know.
How many alligators can a mom have?
They're called a clutch, okay? And typically it'll go between 20 to 40, you know. Now, here's another good thing for the alligators, what its value is. The baby alligators, like this, okay, they're not more than 8 to 10 inches long, right? They're a good food source for the male alligators will eat them, okay? Birds will eat them, the large cranes and all that stuff will eat them, you know? So they do, and the turtles, they'll catch them and eat them. So I don't know what the survival rate is out of a clutch, probably depending on the habitat, but that's another way that they help the whole deal work. Of course, down here you got so many sprayed ponds without any thing around but dirt. You don't have much of a place for them to nest half the time in these adult communities. But there was a program. Okay, go ahead, sir.
I have a question. To what extent do you think the invasive pythons out in the Everglades are affecting the alligator population, if any?
They're affecting it, okay? The thing is, to what extent, okay? The biologists supposedly know a lot more of those answers than I do, because they're dealing with it now, all right? But so I've been told that it is seriously affecting it. And let me give you an example about with the alligator, right? People will come out with this thing and say, oh, there's just too many alligators, right? No. Nature has a way with dealing with this, okay? Either they're going to starve, okay, or kill each other, or kill all the, or they have a natural way of dying, okay? Where they'll move away to different places to find a food source. Then they just can't run down to the supermarket and throw something on the table, some plastic, and get food. They have to do it the hard way or they won't overpopulate, okay? And that's going to be the same way with Mr. Python. He's worked his way up through South Florida now, just like the, what do you call those big old lizards?
Yes,
Iguanas, yeah, they're here, okay? Along with a lot of other lizards and species like that are here. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe the big alligators are eating a lot of the snakes too, okay? Maybe that's helped them in a certain extent, some way. I know those lizards that are about yay long with the orange head, you know, the males. I talked to a buddy of mine up here, he went to school with me, and he said, no, Mike, he said, them things, he said, they serve a good purpose. I said, well, I'd like to hear that. What would that be? He said, you know, we got hawks that migrate coming down to Florida every winter. He said, when they come down here, he said, after they get here, he said, they clean up a lot on those lizards. I said, okay, you know. So nature takes care of itself is what I'm trying to say, okay, except for Florida. We've got 8 billion people in the humanity part of it, and we're starting to overcrowd ourselves in different aspects. That's why you're having all this violence and immigration and all that kind of stuff going on. You didn't have that 100 years ago like that, so bad. But maybe that will take care of ourselves the same way nature's going to take care of a lot of other stuff, unfortunately. But who said it was kind? Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, when you're talking about nuisance alligators, is it simply because it's on private property, it's in a gated community, or does it have to do something to prove that it's a nuisance?
No, that's a good question, and it's unfortunately got an answer that I'm not really pleased with. TIPS supposedly, that's why the program came about, they were to decide whether it's a nuisance or not, whether it's a threat or not, okay? However, I have gone on permits where the people complained that the alligator might eat the sandhill crane. What the heck is wrong with that picture, right? That's what they eat. that's their natural food source, is a crane, right? That would be one of them. And even if it's it has to be supposedly 4 feet long or longer, right? And just because it lays up in your backyard, that doesn't mean it's threatening you. It just has to do that to get remember, they're a reptile. They have to be kept warm. That's how they warm themselves, you know? But, oh, they kill people. There's, oh, this, oh, that, you know, until I think there's a lot of laxation on the permitting process, okay? And some people have a tendency, according to some of these guys I know, to exaggerate the size, and so supposedly they go there and they catch it and they relocate it. Well, we weren't allowed to relocate anything, so what do? Well, back then it was different, so maybe they are relocating them and are allowed to relocate them. I don't know that answer now, okay, because it's been a long time. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, sir.
What was the most difficult gator you ever had to remove in terms of catching them? Or
Well, I had one that was called a ghost gator, okay? I named him that because I could hunt that gator and hunt that gator. Never seen him. I mean, I knew how to hunt him too. I'd hunt him at night. I'd hunt him in the cold weather when I knew he'd be on the bank, right? I had a gator one time. It was over in not Piper's Landing. I had him in there too, but over in, what the name of that development is. You go off the Murphy Road back in there. It's, anyway, it was on a golf course. It was about a 9-foot gator, okay? And I'd go over there, never see him, never see him, never see him, right? He knew when not to be out. And I asked everybody, keep it at the guard. Call me right away, right? This is before cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I had a beeper then, which I couldn't hear. But so anyway, I told my buddy, I said, Larry, I said, we're going to go in here and we're going to do some fishing, okay? Oh my God. Oh, what's the name of that development? But regardless, it's just close to I guess Mile Lake's still there. They've developed it so hard. But we went in there with my little, a jig pole, right? And a rod and reel, each of us. Him in the back, I'm in the front. We caught 87, I think it was, speckled perch in just about 2.5, 3 hours. So I said, I got this gator figured out while I'm fishing. I said, I know where he is. He goes, how do you know that? I said, think about it. If he's not inside, he has to be hiding in some place. I said, the only thing left is these culverts off the golf course. I said, he's seen over there before, more on that big golf course. He said, you're right. So we went over to the golf course. We found this drain on the golf course. Sure enough, there was air in the pipe, but it had one of the big old heavy steel grates on it. And went out into the pond, and you couldn't see the pipe there. So it went a long ways till it got to that pond. He'd go back up in that pipe and get his air through that drain pipe. I said, all we got to do is wait now until we get one of those frog choking, they call them, rains down here, right? And it'll fill that pipe up, and he's got only one place to get air, and that's up in this drain. He'll have to stick his head into this drain and come up and get air. I said, then he's mine. So I backed my Jeep up there one day after that frog choker, and I got my snare. We got the pipe lifted off of it, and I had the snare down where the drain was. So when he came out, his snare would always be in there. He'd just stick his snare in the head, in the noose, and he did. I just tightened up on it, and I had it tied off to my truck. You could hear him plowing around in that pipe with that raising cane, right? And got him, right? Close to that one was, y'all know where Cinnamon Tree is, right?
Is that the ghost one?
Pardon me? No, that wasn't the ghost. I never did find that ghost gator.
Oh.
No, never did find him. He disappeared. But the other tough one that I got one time was, y'all know where Cinnamon Tree is, right? Okay. Most people don't know it, but they got a pipe. It's a big, tall pipe, or I think it's 2 pipes maybe, that go underneath US 1, under through the medium, all the way at the other side, on the east side on the west side of US 1. It goes completely across, right? And me finding that gator was going to be just about impossible in that community. So I don't know where they were seeing him at. So I don't know who I went with, but I said, there's a time I got to go up in that culvert and find him. I said, I got one of them 500-foot spools of wire rope, I tied it off to my side, And I said, you pull me, when I snatch that pole, don't pull me down, just pull me out, right? Because I'm going to have him in a rope. So I got a lot of rope and that, and I went through there as quietly, as sure as I could. And this was kind of spooky because he was a big gator, right? But the nice thing about Mr. Alligator is once you get that noose around his neck, his feet are like this, and he's wanting to stop you from coming forward. He's backing up trying to pull. He is not coming at you. He's backing up, right? So I let him, once I got that noose on him, and he started doing that death roll like this here, I'm pulling like this here, my buddy's pulling me out of there, you know. I got out of there, and sure enough, we had him on that rope then. All we had to do was pull that heavy dude out of there, you know. That we did. And once he tires out, his legs are pretty like, go ahead and slide me out, you know.
But the death roll is like a response to danger?
It's like if I put a rope around your neck and you started spinning, okay? You know, that's the only thing they know how to do to try to spin, and they got that pipe in their mouth now because it's got them around the neck, which is what I wanted them to do. Yeah. But there's been a lot of times like that you don't feel comfortable doing it, yeah.
That death roll, is that also part of their hunting technique when they're getting a larger animal, larger meaning a dog, a cat, a deer?
What they do mostly is their favorite deal is just grabbing it and pulling it under the water, and the water will take care of it, right? The death roll is if something's got them, that's what they do, they'll flip out, right? Because I never got involved with, I knew what I did and what worked, you know, but the death roll, they'll use that also if, say, meat's not mature, for a nicer word, right? And they'll grab something off and then roll it and try to break it and tear it off, you know. That's what they'll do with it also. Yes, sir, go ahead.
How do you tell if it's a gator male or female?
Okay, that's a good question. There's two ways. I'll let you figure out one way, but I'll tell you another way is usually your females don't get much longer or even over. I've only found one that reached over 8 feet, okay? Everything after 8 feet is a bull alligator, okay? And you get a bull alligator, even if it's a smaller alligator, and he's rolling, and you know, you can see what is a male, okay, at that time. Okay, well, I don't know if I should tell that one or not, but go ahead.
So alligator wrestlers, I thought they were like lizards, that if you rubbed their stomach, they would.
Well, there's two myths about that. One is, you know, people, first off, they think, I'll put it this way, baby alligators I was talking a while ago, okay, most people don't know it, but they're born white. Yeah, they're born white. You know how they get the dark that they are? Just laying out in the sun. I reeled that one in, didn't I? No, they're born the color. But no, people ask me, well, how do you catch them? I said, well, it's easy. You catch them laying up on the sun on the bank, and you sneak up behind them like you do a bird and pour that salt all down their tail, you know, and they can't move. No, it's not true either. Damn, I shouldn't be lying so much, should I? Not just bending the truth a little bit, right? Okay, no. The rubbing the belly, when you put an alligator up on top, back over like that, I've been told that it takes his brain in the socket, it just like makes him unconscious and you can rub him like this, right? But by the time you get that gator on his back, okay, and that part of him, he's so whipped, you don't need him on his back for one, you want him on his belly. Yeah, that's what you gotta have him on his belly to catch him.
Well, we'd always read that if you could just get something you rubbed them, you could
Well, little lizards.
calm them.
Yeah, no, you're not gonna calm an alligator down, you're gonna tire him down, that's it, you know. He doesn't like to be messed with. If you leave the alligator alone, folks, okay, trust me, unless you're in his kitchen, he'll leave you alone. Okay, now, they're known to get up on the bank and chase a dog and grab it and pull it down, right? Like that lady got caught walking alongside of the pond and a big 10-foot gator seen him and said, oh, I can run up there and grab her. I mean, that was pretty bad. I do have dreams and nightmares about alligators a lot. You know, you're going to have them after you did it for so many years, right? With kids and all that kind of stuff. It's not pleasant. You have the after effects, but you learn to deal with it just like anything else, you know. But the alligator people will say to me, well, Mike, is it true that if you zigzag and run from an alligator, you can get away from him, right? I said, sir, by the time you figured out that you got to zigzag and run, he's done got your butt, you know. Yeah, so, yeah, but supposedly that would help, supposedly. Anybody else got any good questions? Yes, ma'am.
They climb a fence.
They climb fences. I've seen pictures of that. They'll walk, actually. I mean, they're predacious. You know, you got to think like the alligator when you're hunting him, right? What's his food source? You know, well, where does he travel to? How long has he been here? Is he here just temporary? So you got to look the area over. But these alligators, I went after one time. They dispatched me about a 9-foot alligator walking behind these apartment buildings, right? The time I got there, he was close to this guy's screen porch. And there's a big pine tree on the back of his lot, just a few feet from the porch. And the gator was just laying there because he didn't like all these people getting around him, watching him like this here. And he's like, okay, I think he was going mating season. And the guy's sliding glass doors were open on his porch. And the guy was standing there. I said, that's your apartment? He goes, yeah. I said, I think I'd be hauling my butt around the front of that building, going there and slide those doors shut before he gets into your house. He's like, really? I go, yeah. He goes, he got in there and he didn't have the nerve to get up to that glass door because that gator was right then on that screen, on the outside of that screen, right? Well, guess what the gator did? Bad luck for him, but he just pushed his nose over and pushed that screen right in like it wasn't anything to push out of the way. He gets on this guy's back patio now, right? Back porch. So then what did I have to do? I had to tie my, no, I didn't tie it off then. I just took my noose and I walked around the back of the house, went through that guy's house, right? And he's already hauled butt, you know. And I grabbed a garbage can. I seen one of these plastic garbage cans, you know. And I wanted something in between him and me so I could get that noose over him and tighten it up on his neck, right? And that gator actually lunged up at me and grabbed the top edge of that garbage can and just wham, 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 shook it like that. I said, oh my Lord, okay, this is not fun, you know. He settled it down, but I still had the garbage can there, you know. And he just settled down. I slipped that noose over his head and then I popped it, let that thing lay down there, and I threw the rope out where that hole was like this. And that gator, meantime, with that noose, he's doing that roll. And I slid the glass door shut, ran around the building, got my rope, tied it around that pine tree. Now I had him tied off. He wasn't going in that guy's house, right? Lucky he didn't break that guy's glass door, you know. But that wasn't too. Anyway, he asked me, he said, man, he said, I don't know what you get paid. But he said, sure hell ain't enough, you know. Yeah. How about you, Lisa Todd? You got any questions?
No,
No.
I already know it all.
Yeah, Lisa's mother used to live right next door to me when I moved in, back from out of the military in Indiantown, right? And this is a non-alligator story, but you'll like it. You'll like it. Okay, my kid was watching Superman, just a little fella on Saturday mornings, right? This is when Clark Kent, their old version, right? And I said, Joey, I said, you like to watch Superman? He goes, yeah. I said, I can fly like Superman. He goes, looks at me with this look. I said, come on, I'll show you out back, right? Okay, take the little fella out back, and I had this big silk oak tree in the backyard. And I said, Joe, you stand right here next to me, right here. And I said, I'm going to count 3. I said, you got to watch close now because I'm going to fly over that silk oak tree. He goes, okay. I said, all right, close. He's ready? He goes, I said, 1, 2. I said, oh, hi, Mrs. Boozer. I waved to her like this here. He looks over like this. I ran around the tree and I laid on the ground on the other side, you know. He looks over at me. I said, hey, Joe. I said, did you see me? He goes, no. No. I said, well, come here. I'll do it one more time. Now, this is where she comes in, right? She was just a kid then, too. Her mother was named Mrs. Todd, of course. And I said, all right, Joey, stand on this side of me this time, right? And I said, all right, you ready? Watch this time, because this is going to be the last time I do it. He says, all right. I said, ready? He goes, yeah. I said, 1, 2. Oh, hi, Shirley, because he knew it. Right. He looks over at her, and I ran around the tree again, laid on that side. You know? I said, come on, you ain't interested in watching me fly over the tree. Later on, you know. Yeah.
Did those jokes work for the alligators too?
Pardon me?
Did you do that with the alligators?
My son is in that book. You'll see him in there in Jonathan-Dixon State Park catching a gator. There's multiple places he's in there where I'm rolling a gator up a ramp on there. You'll see there's some great pictures in there. If you take pictures of those pictures, you can print them out, you know. But I got to copyright them all. I get $100 each. You know? Yeah, yeah. My daddy used to say, "Son, you love a lot and you lie a lot, but you lie a lot about loving." All right, that's good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.